and Paul Myra for helping us today. I am Terry Smith, President of Commonwealth North. I also serve as the Chief Financial Officer for Airstrike Firefighters, LLC. We are an Alaskan-funded firefighting company operating 7 large air tankers that fight wildfires all over the nation, so we're excited to hear the Senator's comments today. Also, if you are a resident in the municipality of Anchorage, as a note, you own a piece of us through their 49th State Angel Fund. The Muni was our anchor investor to put our firefighter teams back into national service. Senator Murkowski's drive for federal accountability and transparency serve us all well. Please silence your cell phones and or turn them off. Commonwealth North is pleased to welcome Senator Lisa Murkowski for an update on the latest developments in Washington, D.C. In particular, she will discuss congressional energy and natural resource policies and how they affect Alaska. As many of you know, Senator Murkowski is the chairman of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee and also serves on the Senate Appropriations Committee, where she is the chairman of the Interior and Environment Subcommittee. Senator Murkowski is a member of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, the first Alaskan to serve on that panel, and also is a senior member of the Senate Indian Affairs Committee. Very good. Senator Murkowski is the first Alaskan-born senator and only the 6th United States senator to serve our state. Before her appointment to the United States Senate in 2002, Senator Murkowski practiced commercial law in Anchorage and was elected to 3 terms in the Alaska State House of Representatives. The senator, and specifically Karen McCarthy, have been very helpful in helping Commonwealth North understand the Farm Bill and its benefits to Alaska in our food security study group. So thank you, Senator, and her staff. We would also like to welcome Senator Murkowski's Chief of Staff, Mike Kowalski, and Energy and Natural Resources Staff Director Brian Hughes, and Leila Kimbrell, the Senator's State Director. Please also help me welcome Governor Phil Walker. We'd also like to say a special thank you to Lyndon, our sponsor for today, and Jeannie St. John. Thank you for your sponsorship and support in all of the things that Commonwealth North does over the years. Now to our head table. To my left is Bob Cox, president of Bristol Bay Industrial Fuels, and he is on the board of Commonwealth North. To my far right, I have Meade Treadwell, principal and of Treadwell Ventures. And of course, our speaker to my direct right. Thank you again, Lyndon. And Commonwealth North was founded to provide a nonpartisan public policy or advisory organization to help our residents better understand the most complex topics that impact our state, ranging from gas lines to healthcare, education, infrastructure, energy, fiscal, and now food security. Our mission is to bring forward public policy recommendations from the experts in each field that are in the best interest of all Alaskans. We fill a unique and nonpartisan niche that provides Alaskans with access to policymakers, frank dialogue, and continual civic engagement. We bring clarity to issues free from political bias and advocate for thoughtful, deliberative development of public policy. Governors Bill Egan and Walter Hickel founded the organization in 1979. These political opponents knew Alaska needed a clearinghouse to exchange ideas and help provide a venue for emerging leaders as they prepare for public service. Every day, we see examples of extreme partisan language and actions that create barriers to good discussion and building relationships. We need your help by attending and participating in our study groups and providing your financial support by underwriting our educational activities. Would the Commonwealth North, would the members of Commonwealth North please stand? And I'd also like to welcome Mr. Frank Murkowski, who joined us just briefly. Thank you, Bob. This is great. Thank you for your membership and tremendous work you've done to educate Alaskans and our policy leaders on Alaska's public policy challenges. I'd also like to invite the rest of you to join Commonwealth North if you're not a member, and thank you for all those that have been attending. Keep in mind before our speaker comes to the podium that if you have any questions, we'll be handing out question cards. Please complete the question cards on your tables. Hold them up and staff will collect them. Please hand your questions to Jim or Aaron and we will gather them and then provide them to the speaker at the end of the program if we have time. And for now, I'd like to turn the program over to our distinguished speaker and past recipient of the Walter J. Hickel Award for Distinguished Public Policy Leadership. Please help me welcome Senator Lisa Murkowski.
It's a great pleasure to be back home. It's good to be with friends. You got great weather here. I left Washington, D.C. yesterday where it was about, I don't know, it was close to 100, but that was going to be the cool day because I think they're calling it the real feel for the weekend is about 112 degrees. So that's the temperature that is outside. Inside in the Capitol building is probably 165 degrees. If you want to talk about politically supercharged, amped up. Terry, I really appreciate you going into the kind of the background of Commonwealth North and the basis upon which it is founded. A forum that presents nonpartisan views and free from political bias, because this is not the world that we are operating in Washington right now. And when you think about some of the rhetoric that has amped up, and then the ability for us to do the work that we have been tasked to do, it does present its own set of challenges. So we work through it. We stand up and speak out when it is appropriate to do so. I've kind of taken the position that if I were to engage with every tweet that comes out, I wouldn't have any time to do anything. So, having said all that, I'm going to talk a little bit about family, because I have some family here this afternoon. Governor Frank Murkowski was just introduced. It's wonderful to be here with my dad, because I know that before and after the speech, I will get the real critique. Brian, my brother, who is on your board of Commonwealth North, and is when I think about energy issues, Brian helps me out with as much as anything there. But also to be joined by my brother, my other brother, Mike Murkowski, who many of you haven't seen because he's been off in other parts of the country and other parts of the globe, and has just recently joined the ranks of the retirees after 30 plus years with senior management at FedEx. So he's here in town, and my mother is as well. So I've got the family table over there with the walkers. I love the fact that we can have multiple governors come into lunch on a Friday afternoon. So it's good to have family here. It's good to have friends. There's a great book out there, any of you that have kids. It's called When the Relatives Came, or When the Relatives Come. It's kind of one of those crazy books. But this is that time of year when, for all of us, that book is really relevant, because we got relatives that we didn't even know about that are coming up and saying, hey, I've always wanted to come to Alaska, and you've got a place for me, right? Well, our house is full right now. We've got a family wedding that is happening this weekend, so there's a lot of relatives coming. But in addition to family relatives and the smiles that they bring and all the chaos that they create in your house, this is the time of year when we have the Washington, D.C. relatives. Everybody who is been appointed to any position has said, hey, you know, when we had that confirmation hearing, you invited me to come up, and I'd like to come now. Now, they never say this in February. They never say this in November. But all of a sudden, we have everybody and their brother that's coming north. So in addition to what the delegation will do in hosting them, I ask all of you to join with us in opening your doors, helping us with the tours, letting them see all that's going on. I had my friend and ranking member Joe Manchin join me that weekend just before the 4th of July. We had an opportunity to take him up north, take him out to King Salmon area. In addition to real work, he was able to catch a few fish, and that leaves good memories with these people. So if we need to leave good impressions with them, give them a fish and they'll think good about it. So I think it's a fair trade. But we have the Chief of the Forest Service join me right after the 4th of July to go through some of the issues and the challenges facing us in the Tongass. We have the VA Secretary, who is in Fairbanks right now. Dan Sullivan is hosting a roundtable with our veterans up north. He's going to be back again later this summer. We've got at least 2 deputy secretaries from the Department of Energy that are coming in August. We've got our EPA Administrator Wheeler, who's coming. We've got the Coast Guard Vice Commandant. We've got the National Endowment of Arts Chairman. We've got Fish and Wildlife Service. The Department of Interior, we have a couple folks coming. I think we've actually got a couple from Housing and Education. So it's all over the board. So I'm asking those of you who are our friends and business leaders in the community here and around the state, just deal with it, roll with it, messes up your schedule. Think about what it does to my schedule, because they all want me to travel everywhere with them. But we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So I have been advertised as giving you an update from Washington, D.C., kind of the view of Washington through the lens of energy and natural resources. And I'm going to do that, but just to demonstrate that I'm not totally tone deaf about what is going on in the state. Obviously, the big discussion here this summer, in addition to the extraordinary weather and the uncomfortable fires and the smoke, has been the budget and what is going on in Juneau. Having been one of your elected members of the Alaska State Legislature, I know the lanes. I'm in the federal lane right now. I respect greatly the lane that our state legislators have, that our governor and his team have. These are hard jobs, and these are difficult discussions for all of us as Alaskans. And so it has been somewhat of a challenge to be 4,000 miles away and not weigh in and say, this is the plan. I have been very engaged, as the other members of the delegation have been, in encouraging. We've got to be talking together as Alaskans on all of this. We can't be separated geographically. We know we have issues that we must deal with. We know that they are challenging, but we've gone through challenging and difficult issues before. We can work through this, but the way that you work through this is you sit down and you hash it out together. And that's where we're seeing. So I'm pleased that we've got everybody in the same room, that we've got these very important meetings that are moving forward, and that level of conversation, dialogue, debate is moving to advance the ball here. So what we've been doing back in Washington, D.C. is really trying to focus on where those potential shortfalls might be for the state if we're not able to come up with these matching federal dollars. And so digging into the real details with the folks in the agencies to determine not only how much we're talking about, but what are these critical deadlines? Because the thing with the federal side is they don't really care what our problems are up here. They don't really care whether we're in Wasilla or whether we're in Juneau. There's a date, and they operate by that date. And if they don't hear from us by that date, they assume that they've got access to something that was going to be in the Alaska pot. And so now they're moving on to something else. So deadlines are important, dollars are important, and what we're trying to do is make sure that there's nothing that is going to slip here. So there's been a lot of work on both ends to try to do that. And in addition to that, part of our job as the delegation is to really keep our eye on the ball in terms of how we can work to further enhance but also stabilize our state's economy and the gains, the economic gains and opportunities that we've put in place. You look to what is going on in the interior right now with the military construction out at Greeley, out at Eielson, at Clear, at Fort Wainwright. It is significant, and it is really kind of helping that interior economy stay together here. In the FY19 military appropriations bill, we had $286.8 million for the MILCON construction projects there in the state. Further south in Kodiak, the focus on our Coast Guard with $22 million for Kodiak, $31 million for Seward, as we're looking to ensure that the assets that we need for our coastal communities, for our waters, for our fishermen, for all that the Coast Guard do is there. We look around today, I don't know, you can still see the mountains, so the impact from the fires is not as noticeable as it was when I came in last night, but our reality is the cost of fire has been a budget driver that has really overtaken our budget in so many ways when it comes to our Forest Service. And so what we were able to do just last year with a fire funding fix, this 10-year average for stabilizing that budget so we don't have these wild swings where eventually we have to rob one pot of money to backfill the other. We have resolved that. But these are all gains that you want to make sure we're not slipping backwards on. Because if we slip on that end, there's repercussions down here or up here on this end. And you combine that with everything else that's going on in the state, and that makes it even more volatile, even more uncertain. So we've got our focus, our challenges. We are in the midst right now. In fact, I think I've checked my phone probably a dozen times already this morning. Did Mnuchin and Pelosi sign off on the budget deal? Because we still don't have a budget deal yet. This is July 19th. July 19th, and we don't have a budget deal on our caps yet. So as the chairman of the Interior Subcommittee, I don't have a budget number that I can start working my accounts off of. It's July 19th. Our fiscal year ends the end of September, so we have got to move huckle-de-buckle. But what we're trying to do is not only get a 2-year deal, which is important, but also trying to wrap up the debt limit issue as well. So there's a lot at play right now. They think that they've got a deal, but in fairness, it all depends on the offsets, where you're going to get the money to pay for it. We've all heard this before, so I'm sitting close on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve monies that everyone views as an ATM account, but it may be that I'm in the midst of that fight as well. So that's kind of the lay of the land from a budget perspective in Washington, D.C. and how it intersects with everything that's going on here. Everywhere I go, everyone that I talk to, I'm talking about budget issues, but the healthcare issues and access to care are still front and center for so many families. We know what we face here in terms of our costs. Went through the fights about access and insurance. What we never really dealt with within the fight over the Affordable Care Act a couple summers ago was, what have we done to reduce the cost of your health care? We were always talking about insurance. I was always in the camp that said, you know what, it seems to me that if you can get down the cost, the overall cost of care, isn't that logically going to bring down the cost of your insurance? Well, we never got to that part of it. So we just moved out of the Health Committee, the Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee, legislation. We're calling it, this is a really fancy name, the Lower Health Care Costs Act. I like it. If we actually do that, this is really going to be something to celebrate. But it's the first time that we have really drilled down on efforts to lower the actual cost of care through greater transparency efforts, increasing prescription drug competition, and then ending this surprise medical billing issue. This is something that probably everybody you know has a story. You say, I don't need to worry, I've got great coverage, love my coverage. Go in, have a procedure, get your knee done, you've lined everything up so everything's in network. But you come out of it and you realize, oh, I didn't know that anesthesiologist, but whatever. And then that anesthesiologist, and you become on a first name basis because they were out of network, and you now have a $3,000 bill for that. And so these are the types of things that people are like, wait a minute, this just doesn't seem to make sense. I thought that there was clear understanding when it came to my healthcare bills. So we've got some issues that we're working through. We're not done yet, but this is something that we are very, very, very engaged on. So now I'm getting to the thing that you actually asked me to speak about, or maybe I said I was going to speak about, and that's where we are with energy and natural resources. So we are the little committee that could. I mentioned the children's book, The Relatives, came. Well, we're the little engine that could. We're the committee that is just kind of quietly plugging away, and we're passing bills. This past week, we passed out 22 energy bills. 22 energy bills. And these are matters that people have been kind of waiting for when it comes to levels of innovation, what we're going to be doing to work to reduce your energy costs. This follows on the success that we had earlier this year when we moved through our public lands package. 124 public lands bills focused on lands and waters and conservation. It was kind of the sleeper ho-hum, gosh, do we have to take up floor time to do this? And then we pass it out 82 to 8, and all of a sudden everybody who was ho-hum about it was like, yeah, I had stuff in that bill, it's pretty good, wasn't it? And then we send it over to the House, and the House who gets up in the morning to just kind of poke a finger in the eye of the Senate because anything that we do isn't nearly good enough. Ask Don Young, he'll tell you. But it was so good. They didn't even change a comma, and they moved it out of their body, 363 to 66. And then the president who had said, these are, I don't know, there's some good things in here, there's some bad things. Everybody is loving this. And it's now viewed as, wow, that was one of the successes that nobody thought was possible because this is a highly, highly supercharged political season already, and our bill's really being passed. Well, we did it. They're all into law. We're looking forward to doing that with our energy bills as well. And we're able to do it because we got good partnerships. I think I won the ranking member lottery when I pulled Joe Manchin, and for those of you who had an opportunity to meet him, I think you would agree he fit in very well in Alaska. Just kind of, he's casual, he gets resource production, understands what it means to work hard in a resource industry, but he also wants to make sure that there's good balance out there. So he would fit in well, and I appreciate those of you who welcomed him so kindly. We're working on a broader energy bill. We have not done real energy reform in it's about 12 years now. And so when you think about where we were 12 years ago, we didn't even have iPads. I mean, I don't even think they were invented. And that's the last time that we really did a full sale scrub of our energy bills. So we've got some work to do, but we've got some exciting pieces in it. And they are things that you would imagine coming from an Alaskan senator. But there's also a few things that you look at and you say, well, where'd that come from? I have been very engaged in the nuclear space. We just moved out a Nuclear Energy Leadership Act. And I do get people say, well, wait a minute, you do oil, you do gas, you do coal, and yeah, you have all those renewables up there that we keep hearing about, but nuclear is just not in the Alaska portfolio, and it's not. It's not. But what is happening in the nuclear space in terms of innovation is something that as Alaskans we should be interested in, because we're interested in those things that can really put us on the map when it comes to reducing emissions, ultimately lowering costs. What we're looking at with advanced nuclear reactors, micro-reactors, the possibility to provide power for instance, to remote military installations, to smaller communities that are completely off the grid. A recognition, I mean, just imagine a system that's the size of a Connex that provides continuous power, needs to be refueled once every 25 or 30 years. It's kind of crazy to think. But when you think about some of the things that we are pioneering in Alaska, the fact that in Igiugig, I think might be today, sometime this week, that we are putting into the river there, up on the Kvichak, this river turbine that they have been working, tweaking around the edges for about 5 years now. We are leading as a state when it comes to microgrids and how we're piecing these smaller energy solutions together. We're getting the attention not only of the nation, but of the world in what we're doing. So I continue to view Alaska as this great, extraordinary proving ground at the same time that we are doing more than ever when it comes to our great resources up on the North Slope. All that we are seeing with the advancements in up at GMT2, what they completed last year, the permitting for Willow is moving along. BLM's working on the integrated activity plan for the region, the Liberty Project. It was great to be able to take Senator Manchin up to CD5 and see what's going on in the Petroleum Reserve. So you bring all these things together, and this is an exciting place to be. This is where things are happening. Not everything's perfect up here, but it never, ever, ever, ever has been. And so let's not get so focused on just some of the challenges that are just kind of gripping us and bringing us down. We've got to remember that we've got some challenges in front of us, but we've got more opportunity than anybody out there. We still have $65 billion with a B in a bank. We are not so broke we can't figure our way out of this. We know how to do this. We just have to come together as Alaskans and do it. And so I've got a lot more that I can talk about, but let's go to the questions, because I think that can be far more interesting and entertaining. But you can tell I don't know, maybe I got too much sleep or not enough sleep last night, but I'm just so happy to be home, I can't even hardly stand it. So thanks for the opportunity to be with you, and then we'll start questions. My dad said to keep it light. He knows I can't tell a joke for love nor money.
By the way,
I said, don't call on anybody.
when's the last time that it might have been appropriate to send a kudo to our friend at the White House?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a couple things going on. I'll give them a kudo because they are working very well with us, the administration, led by the President's initiative, working with us on a state-specific plan for the Tongass as it relates to the roadless. We've been working really well with them on that. Other areas of kudos, I just mentioned our opportunities up on the North Slope, but the folks that President Trump has placed into office helping us on these Alaska-specific issues are just fabulous. Joe Balash, next time you see him, you need to give that guy a high five. He is working his tail off, and he is doing extraordinary work for us. And it is hard work. You know, there are times when I get singled out, I guess, if you will, for being too critical of the president. And I'm a senator, yes, but I think I'm a mom first. And sometimes it does matter how you say things. And I tell my kids, okay, you're right on what your intention was, but you really didn't say it right. So you need to think about how you say some things. And I hold true to that. So I know that sometimes that is a challenge for folks, that I will be direct, but I think it's also important to be direct and remind us all that words matter. But as words matter, policies matter too. And I think we've seen some of the policies, particularly as they relate to our resources and our ability to access our own energy resources, that we can give good credit to President Trump for leading on that. Now, he didn't write that down, so he doesn't get any more questions.
Yeah, he walks around that table.
That's right.
Sure. So there was a question, can you give us a little more context on your comment that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve has been treated as an ATM, just a context for that?
Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, give a little more context for how the Strategic Petroleum Reserve has been treated as an ATM. As you know, we have, over the years, as a requirement, nationally and internationally, we're required to hold a source of reserves, hold them down in the Gulf states, but what it effectively is it is an opportunity that when you sell resources from the reserves, it gives you available cash. And so when you're looking for an offset, the opportunity to, well, let's just sell 40 million barrels, because that will free up however much we need to have. I'll give you an example. When we passed, it was called the Cures Act. This was legislation that helped to deal with the opioid addiction and deal with cancer matters. Significant legislation, very important, great bipartisan support, big price tag. Where did they get a significant portion of the money for the offset? They sold money from the, they sold oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, you can make the argument that, well, this is a really important initiative. I have made the argument that we don't want ourselves to be in a position where we have sold off our safety net, if you will. We have sold down so much that in the event that we needed those reserves, we now don't have the ability because we sold them. We used it as a pay-for. We used it as the piggy bank, the ATM, whatever you may call it. And so I'm very guarded. I just asked for a report from the Congressional Research Services, because I want to know how much we have obligated, what we paid, what the price of oil was when it went in, versus what we will receive when we pay it out. Because oftentimes we are not money ahead with this transaction. But it looks good as long as you don't look behind the curtain. And so these are really important, and I do get pretty guarded on that.
Another question comes in about the new icebreaker stationing and the prioritization of it in the Antarctic. Can you give us the...
Yeah. So $675 million is what we were able to secure last year for the first new polar security cutter, icebreaker, first one in 40 plus years. That will be sufficient to not only build out that icebreaker, but leave some for the second one that is anticipated. The study says that this country, as an Arctic nation, needs 6. We're a little bit behind everybody else, and particularly behind other Arctic nations in terms of where we are with having an icebreaker fleet. So we're on the way. My concern is that it's about a 10-year build-out for this icebreaker. Maybe a little bit less, maybe we can get it 8 years or so. But it's not going to be in the water before our only polar strength icebreaker, the Polar Star, will be retired. She's got anywhere from 5 to 6 to 7 years of useful life. She's already been rehabbed once before. But the story behind the Polar Star is she has been operating in the Antarctica, fulfilling the U.S. commitment to do the breakout at McMurdo. She's been doing that for some period of time. She hasn't been in Arctic waters in years. She makes it as far north as Seattle, gets some work done, and then goes back. So the reality is that this new this polar security cutter that we will see, you talk to our friends in the Coast Guard, and they will acknowledge that, well, we're going to need this new icebreaker to continue that mission in Antarctica. So that's why it's critical that we have not only one, but we have 2, and we have 3, and we have 4 and 5 and 6 as well. And so this is something that I have been pounding the table for years and years, and we finally made the necessary headway with our polar security cutters. But there is so much more that we have to do, and we can't take our foot off the gas. One of the things that Meade and I have been focused on and working on, in fact, we were just together day before yesterday in Washington, D.C. at the Wilson Center Ice Diminishing Arctic Conference, talking about the commercial activities and what's going on in the Arctic space and what is happening or happening around us, happening in front of us without necessarily our involvement right now, and how the United States must begin to engage at a higher and greater and faster level when it comes to all things Arctic. So whether it is onshore infrastructure on the water, charting underneath, as an Arctic nation, we've got work, and we need to be moving yesterday.
2 more questions as we get close to wrap time. This one's on cybersecurity and the efforts, as we know that they grow exponentially every year on the threats. There's some House bills that are working through. Can you talk about emergency response efforts and just how we're tackling that, and once it grows?
I wish that I could say with a level of assurance that we're really attacking the issues of cyber from a very holistic perspective that kind of gives that level of comfort. But instead, I think what you're seeing here is almost a somewhat responsive in this particular sector, and we learn a little bit about perhaps some of the best practices or the failures of practices in that area. Legislatively, we have been not successful in coming up with what I would regard as a real umbrella that allows for greater protections when it comes to cyber activity. Part of it is, think about it, every committee in the United States Senate has some level of jurisdiction within cybersecurity, with cybersecurity issues. Energy, Homeland, Transportation, I mean, any committee that you can think of. And so it has been a challenge there. And so that's why I think what you see are, again, these more targeted cyber legislation initiatives that may be directed towards one. But this is something that, when I think about our vulnerabilities as a nation, you know, I recognize that we've got vulnerabilities when it comes to mineral security, to energy security. But when it comes to our exposure to the cyber threat, This is something that is bigger and broader and badder than just about anything out there.
Very good. And my watch is a little bit fast. We do have time for just a couple of
Okay.
questions. So, what are your thoughts on this, the seizing of the second British tanker? There?
Well, we're actually going to be having a briefing on this next week at the White House, in conjunction with some of the other activities that are going on. What we're seeing there in the Straits of Hormuz, obviously, very challenging, very concerning. The level of provocation, whether it is going after a tanker, whether it's what we saw a couple days ago with the intercept of the drones, these are activities that are causing many of us to fear that you might have some accidental incident that really pushes things to a place that brings about a level of serious engagement. And I think that's something that we all seek to avoid, but it is very volatile there right now. For us, from the energy sector, you think about what that means when the Straits of Hormuz, where so much of the oil, the global oil, flows through, what that means to our business case here in Alaska. All of a sudden we become, I think, that much more important in terms of our production, what we are producing, how we are contributing. I think we've always recognized that you've got significant choke points in different parts of the world, but this is, and I'm listening to myself say that, and I don't even like the implication that it might be considered an opportunity for us here in Alaska, because this is not an opportunity. When something bad and horrible worldwide, globally happens, you don't want to say that that's an opportunity for us, but I do want us to remember our position, our place in the world as well, because I think it is important what we contribute. You know, the fact that just a few years ago, we had been, as a nation, prohibited from exporting our oil. Only here in Alaska were we allowed to export. And that was something that Frank Murkowski led, and that I was then able to follow on and lift a 40-year export ban. That has helped the United States, and it's not only helped us, it allows us to help our friends and allies when we can provide that much needed resource to them. But these are matters that, again, I'm very anxious about where we are right now with Iran and the provocation and what we're specifically seeing out of the Straits of Hormuz.
Last question, so this is selfish. There's a couple of cards that also ask the question. From your vantage points, federal, and then your experience in the state, and knowing the state as well as you do, any recommendations that you see low-lying fruit for policy work that Commonwealth North or we as Alaskans could take up and make sure it's brought on the task list? So any thoughts there?
Well, you mentioned food security, and I'm pleased that is something that you focus on, because I think that is an area, you know, when we think about ways that we can be more, that we can just take care of ourselves a little bit better. I think we've got so many opportunities there in that space, and we don't really think about that. So I applaud you for that initiative. I am assuming that Arctic initiatives are part of what Commonwealth North focuses on. And if they are not, I would certainly commend them to you. This is a space that is being occupied by others oftentimes because they view that the interest from those who are most close to it is either overlooked or they're just not appreciating it. And I have been, again, whether it's icebreakers or just an awareness of what is happening in the Arctic, a changing Arctic, an evolving area, but a place on the globe that is generating great interest, not only from a security perspective, economic security, national security, environmental security. This is a space that we need good, strong leadership coming out of the state, placing Alaskans in an area where we are truly at the table. One of the things that I have noticed as I have traveled internationally speaking about the Arctic, whether it is in Finland or Norway or Iceland or at a conference in Shanghai, you get outside the country and people honestly view us as another country. So we're kind of on par with other nations. So when I'm able to go and visit with heads of states, I get the heads of states because they kind of look at Alaska through a very different lens. We're not from Arkansas. We are that place that makes the United States an Arctic nation. And so we have a role and an opportunity as Alaskans to lead this conversation in a way that people from other states would simply not have. And so I think that's a good challenge for all of us here. And I would commend that one to you.
Well,
Are we good?
we are good.
All right.
Thank you so much. Well, that was just phenomenal. Thank you, Senator Lisa Murkowski, for joining us today and sharing with us your thoughts and wisdom, and just also for, on a personal note, setting my youngest daughter, Ashley, is a page for you this summer. And so I just wanted to say, well, thank you. And I got to bet even better than that is when they see you and the role model that you set and the tone you take, it makes